You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Excited to get started today on our Weight Loss and Wellness Wednesday show. So yesterday on our Total Wellness Tuesday, we went through a really deep topic about this 100-year-old form of medicine, formerly from Germany. Now it's literally all around the world that's starting to catch on, and a lot of health practitioners are looking into it. A lot of them are integrating it into their practice. So I wanted to be one of the first people to try to bring that to you, share it with you. Hopefully you enjoyed that show. Now today's show is going to be a lot of fun. This has really been the accumulation of 852 episodes. I think that's what we're on actually from yesterday. Today should be episode 852, I believe. I'll get that link for you by the end of the show. And what I want to do today is really break down the 10 most common food misconceptions. So this has come from, I think, over 1,500 Cabral house calls, all the questions that come in on the weekend house calls that we do. And they allow me to really see what people are thinking. We also have our Facebook group called cabralsupportgroup.com. That's just the URL. It will take you right there. It's a completely free Facebook group where you can ask questions there. And again, I get a lot of data, right? So we do about 20,000 appointments a year. We've done over 250,000 appointments, one-on-ones with people. We get to see the most common misconceptions that are out there, not because people, are trying to do the wrong thing, but honestly, it's because the media, it's what you've been led to believe is not always accurate. And to be honest, most of the time it's not. It's to promote some type of agenda. And here in the Cabral Concept, we have no agenda. Honestly, it's bringing you the best of the best. The best lab tests, whether it be blood work with your PCP, whether it be hormone testing, gut-based testing, you name it, that's what we're going to bring to you. We bring to you the best of Equilibrium Nutrition, our nutritional supplements, but at the same time, we also talk about pure encapsulations. We talk about Thorne. We talk about designs. We talk about integrative therapeutics. We talk about all sorts of great functional medicine brands, anybody that does third-party testing. So really what we want to do is answer your questions. We want to bring you the best of the best. And I thought today's show would be a lot of fun. So what I'm going to do is go through, honestly, the top 10 food misconceptions that I see in my practice and that we've been able to see really now over the past couple decades, and just bring you all of those items. So without further ado, let's get right into it so you know exactly what we're talking about. Now, all the links because I'm going to link back to previous podcasts. I know we have a lot of new listeners coming in. So for anybody that hasn't gone back to previous podcasts, I'll link up some of the ones that you might want to learn more information on. It's almost like, you read a good book and the book is like 300 pages long, but along the way in that 300-page book, you learn like 3 or 4 new concepts. And those 3 or 4 new concepts bring you to read maybe 3 or 4 different other books. And people ask me for book recommendations, but I always say just get started. And then when you find a topic that you don't know a lot about that they're speaking about in that book, then go start to research and read about that. And so that's always what I've done. That's where my education has led me. The reason why I believe that's the way to go is because it keeps you interested. You're not reading books that you're not interested in. You got to choose the book. You chose to further your education. And I think that's the fantastic thing about this health industry. We can never go as far down the rabbit hole as we want. There's always more to learn. It never ends. So the first food misconception that I want to talk about is this. It's called organic food. A lot of people, they're even health professionals, and they're like, it's no big deal whether you eat organic or not. Well, here's the deal. A lot of times people are saying it doesn't matter whether you eat organic or not, and here's why. That it's the same amount of protein, the same amount of carbs, and the same amount of fat. Meaning, let's just say you get almonds, right? So you're getting a couple grams of protein, you're getting 6 to 8 carbs in your serving, and you're getting 12 to 13 grams of fat per essentially tablespoon. And that's not going to change whether it's organic or non-organic. So I understand that. I totally get that. It makes sense. But the other deal is this, is that The macros stay the same, but the micros do not. The macros are your fat, your carbs, and your protein. But we know through research, through study, that organic-based foods, if they're grown in organic-based soil, contain more micronutrients, and that is the vitamins and that is the minerals that are taken up through the soil into the food itself. So the food looks the same a lot of the time, and it has the same fat, protein, and carbs, but it does not have as many minerals, the micronutrients, right? Oftentimes, it's so much more important than the macros. So the macros are also the calories. And that's why a lot of people's body, they have enough nutrition, right? They're eating enough calories, but their body is starving for nutrients. And this is what we call empty calories. So your body's getting enough calories, but it's not getting enough nutrients, which then causes the body to have more cravings, to hold more weight. So if you're someone right now who's having difficulty losing weight, it's also why I recommend doing something like the daily fruit and vegetable blend. It's 22 organic fruits and vegetables, but there's almost 0 calories. Like legitimately, there's hardly any sugar, 2 grams. There's only 5 grams of carbs. One of that is a gram of fiber. There's only 30 calories, only 30 total calories, with 2 more coming from protein in the entire thing. And you're getting 22 organic fruits and vegetables. Again, you don't have to use that. It's simply an example. So what are you getting? Well, you're getting the micronutrients, not a lot of macros, not a lot of calories, but a lot of micros, so that your body is finally getting it, starving for nutrition. That's the big thing. The other thing I have to say about organic is that here's the deal. When you spray your food with pesticides, your body is accumulating all of those pesticides every time you eat. And those pesticides are meant to kill what? Bugs and bacteria. Well, if you're putting that into your body, it's killing a lot of the same gut bugs, the good bugs that we want in there, the good bacteria, the microflora. And it's causing fertility-based issues. We know that it's linked to cancer, glyphosate, and pesticides in general. We know that in order to give a lab rat cancer, they actually use a common food pesticide. So if we know that those food pesticides cause cancer in lab rats, can we extrapolate that data and say, maybe, just maybe, it could be causing that in humans? Well, my answer is maybe. Better safe than sorry. Let's try to cut back. If you can't eat all organic food right now, I understand that. It's not always even available to you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back and I want you to look at a podcast I did on the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. That will actually talk to you about which foods that are better to eat. If you can't eat all organic, you would get the Clean 15. The Clean 15 are cleaner, right? What does that mean? Well, it means that the pesticide can either be washed off, or you can peel that fruit or maybe vegetable, and you can then not be exposed as much to the pesticide. Okay, so that's episode 349. StephenCabral.com/349. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make it really easy today. I'm going to give you an extra link for all of these 10 topics so I don't make this a 2-hour show. And you're going to go to StephenCabral.com/852. At episode 852, I will actually give you all of the previous links right there, right? Hopefully that's helpful. All right, food misconception number 2 is this. The FODMAP foods, the fructo, oligo, di, mono, and polysaccharide foods. You might be asking yourself right now, like, what does that mean? What's a fructo, oligo, di, mono, and polysaccharide food? Well, these are some of the foods that we eliminate for the first 6 to 12 weeks for people doing our Candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol. So a lot of people have to stay away from those specific foods for a period of 6 to 12 weeks as we begin to remove the yeast overgrowth, as we remove the SIBO, anything that's leading to that gut overgrowth, right? The bacterial overgrowth. So we do that, but what we do is we have to understand this, that a lot of those great foods that are eliminated should be added back into the diet by the 12-week mark. Maybe not all of them because you might be sensitive to them, but at least some. And the reason is they're great prebiotic-based foods. The human body was not meant to live forever without a lot of these great prebiotics. And again, if you've done our Candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol, you know on that we eliminate foods for the first 21 days, and then some foods for 4 to 6 weeks, and then some foods for 6 to 8 weeks. And then after 12 weeks, pretty much all foods are added back in, and we simply do a challenge. We add some back in after 21, some back after 6 weeks, some back after 8, and some back all after 12. And it's simply a new challenge every 3 days. So the reason is with those foods, they can be healthy foods, right? What about things like cauliflower? Great sulfur-based vegetable, really good for the gut, but we eliminate it in the beginning because it's higher in fructans. So we add that back in later down the road. Again, so what I want you to think about is this. Those foods are not meant to be eliminated forever, but we do eliminate them for the first 6 to 12 weeks. A lot of people, they never add them back in, and that can be, it's not dangerous, but the problem is this, is that you're lacking the biodiversity of the foods that you're eating, and then you're not allowing yourself to begin to build up the good gut microbiome by the time you're completing our CBO finisher, our Heal and Seal gut rebuilding protocol, where you're kind of resealing that gut wall. So episode 796, StephenCabral.com/796 talks about how to get rid of candida and bacterial overgrowth, and it goes through the entire protocol. I hold nothing back. I share with you exactly what we do in case you're working with your own naturopath or functional medicine doctor right now. Okay, number 3, big food conception right here. Huge misconception that I talked about way back on episode 185 and 218. And that was this, that dairy is not a health food. I want to repeat that. Dairy is not a health food. The dairy that we're consuming right now is coming from cows that are literally sick and dying. That's not an exaggeration. I'm not trying to hype that up. Over 50%, over half of all the antibiotics manufactured in the United States go to cows. They literally go to cows. And that's because those cows would be dead if they were not fed antibiotics in their food. Because cows are being fed grain, corn, soy, Skittles. Yes, you heard that right, Skittles. And you can look that up. Again, you never have to take my word for it. I just want to be the one that shares the information with you, and you're always welcome to double check it on your own. I like that. I have no problem with that, okay? Because again, the job is to share the information and then for you to learn it, absorb it, share it with your family, and then share it with friends. It's the only way that we can make this information become part of the mainstream society. You will never learn this from the evening news. You will never learn this on the front page of pick your favorite media source. They'll never share it with you. And that's because there are huge industries that pay for all the advertising on these commercials that they would never go against, right? Think of the dairy industry, how enormous they are. But I'm telling you, we're making a difference because a lot of these farms that are dairy farms are now switching over to producing nuts and things like that to make nut milks, because we're able to make a difference. And that's because we don't want ourselves and we don't want our children drinking milk from contaminated animals that are pumped full of estrogen, right? And we wonder why girls are going through puberty at 9, 10, and 11 years old. And we're wondering why children are gaining so much weight and have diabetes. Well, here's the thing, that the animals that we eat are sick and they're being fed foods that they shouldn't be. And then we're getting the byproduct of those animals. And those animals are infected. The udders of the cows have blood and pus. And again, if you don't have to take my word for it, you can look at YouTube videos and you can look at these farms, how they treat animals. So unless you're going to a farm that's literally grass-fed and no antibiotic and, they have 8 cows on the farm, that's a totally different story. We're not talking about that. You're getting raw milk and it's not contaminated. We're talking about 2 different things. That's not what you're getting at your local Whole Foods store. And organic milk does not count. Organic still means that your cow could be fed organic soy, organic corn, organic grains in general. They are not meant to eat those foods. Cows are meant to graze in the pasture. They're not meant to eat those grains. It makes them sick. Okay, so what I want to do is this. I want to share with you, as a clinician, I run thousands of IgG food sensitivities every year. Okay, the number one food sensitivity from all of those is dairy. It's cow's milk. You can make an argument that you could eat goat milk, goat cheese, or sheep's cheese and sheep's milk. You can make that argument. You can't make the argument for goat-based. I should say for cow-based, okay? It's the number one food sensitivity that I see in kids. It's the number one food sensitivity that I see in adults. All right, so you can check that out with food sensitivity talks that I've given before. But I'm just telling you right now, you can be so much healthier if you have allergies, if you have asthma, if you have a lot of mucus production, if you have postnasal drip, if you have inflammation, if you have gut issues. I'm just telling you, try 21 days, no cow's milk at all. You might see a tremendous difference in your life. All right, eggs is up next. Eggs, the most common food misconception, number 4. Here's the deal. I actually have no problem with eggs. If you're buying pastured eggs, not organic eggs, but pastured eggs. Remember, organic eggs, chickens can be fed soy. They're not supposed to be fed organic soy, okay? So let them be pastured. That's the important thing. Yes, cage-free. Yes, pastured. All right. I have no problem with eggs at all. I do not, okay? But here's the deal. They're the number 2 food sensitivity that I see. So again, I've run thousands of food sensitivity tests, and eggs are the number 2. Remember, this isn't just me running these food tests. This is some of the top hospitals and clinics in the world from a conventional medicine perspective saying that eggs are also one of the top 5 food sensitivities for both children and adults. So on episode 389, I did a podcast, The 10 Signs You May Have a Food Sensitivity. Check out that show. On episode 502, I wrote 5 sneaky food sensitivity symptoms. All right. Both of those shows will give you kind of a little, just an in-depth window into why you might have these, because eggs are not an immediate reaction typically. Yes, some kids might get the mood-based changes or runny eyes or red cheeks or maybe a rashy skin, but a lot of egg sensitivities are actually delayed response, 24 to 72 hours later. The headaches, the migraines a day or two later, the fatigue, the brain fog, the skin rash, the histamine issues, those can be a couple days later. And that's why I recommend just doing a food sensitivity test. Again, I will link all this up at stevencabral.com/852 to make your life a little easier. All right, number 5 is this. These are all meant to be overviews, and then you can do more in-depth study on this, because I really would love you to pass this show on if it's helpful. If it's not helpful, that's okay. Then you don't need to pass it on. But protein. All right, here's the deal. We all think we need way more protein than we really do. A lot of us get worried. We're not getting our protein. We're not getting our protein. Remember, I lived until the age of about 25, 26, 27 years old, thinking I need to get a lot of protein to make my body big, grow my muscles, all of those things. But I was making myself sick by eating 250 to 300 grams of protein, sometimes more per day. My body was weighed down. It took a tremendous amount of energy to break down all of that protein I was eating. I got pneumonia like every other year. I was just not healthy. My kidneys weren't working as well. I was having just my liver was working overtime. Not healthy at all to be eating that much protein. How much do you need? Typically 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's not easy math for most people to do. Here's the deal. Take your body weight, cut it in half. That's typically the amount of protein you need at your ideal body weight. If you weigh 160 pounds, let's do easy math. That's about 80 grams a day. That's really the maximum. You don't really need a lot more than that. And yes, you can get it from a plant-based diet. Am I telling you that you need to be completely plant-based, vegan-based or vegetarian diet? No. But what I'm saying is that if you watch how you eat, you can easily get that. You can do your smoothie in the morning with a vegan-based protein powder. You can use hemp protein. You can use our daily nutritional support, whatever you like. Here's the deal. I'm going to make this easier for you. 15 to 20 grams of protein per meal. That's essentially a handful of protein at breakfast. And again, that can be your shake powder, at lunch, and at dinner. That's really it. That gives you 60 grams a day. It's that simple. That's all most people need to worry about. It could be a handful of beans or lentils or whatever it might be. And again, you're getting some protein if you're eating oatmeal, if you're eating things like that as well. Or it could be a handful of fish. It can be a handful of chicken, whatever you decide to have. At each meal, it's all you need. That is the maximum. I want you to check out this show because this was an important show because I'm trying to always be as unbiased as I can because again, I have no dog in the race. I do not. So I talked about the research and the studies, and check out episode 802. That was an important episode. And it was talking about essentially the end of high protein diets. And it's because if we look at across the board, why people are getting results from plant-based, why they're getting results from low carb or keto, or I shouldn't say low carb, of all these diets, a lot of times the correlating factor is they're going lower on their protein. And when you go lower on your protein, a lot of times you're having less immune-based reactions, less inflammatory-based reactions. And the studies show right now, and this goes all the way back to the blue zones as well, that people that get just about 10% of their diet from protein live the longest, least amount of health issues from the top 3 killers in the United States in terms of cancer, high cholesterol, diabetic-based issues as well. So check out that show. I thought it was important research. That's episode 802. All right, number 6 is lectins. So lectins, I did a whole show on this on episode 781. If you're having issues with lectins right now, we recommend the same sensitive gut guide that we use for the Candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol. For the most part, we recommend running an organic acids test. And if possible, run the stool test and run the food sensitivity test. That will really show you what's going on with your gut and why the sensitivity to lectins in the first place. Remember, there's always an underlying root cause. Most people, they do the sensitive gut guide, they eliminate the lectins for the first 21 days or so, and they start to bring them back in. If you still have an issue, okay, let's clear up the gut, let's rebuild the gut wall, and then let's try to add some of the higher lectin-based foods. Because even in the Plant Paradox book, which I reviewed, I mean, even Dr. Gundry doesn't say eliminate them forever. You do an elimination for somewhere between maybe 6 weeks, 12 weeks. And then for the most part, after you've started to rebuild your gut, you're able to add these good foods back in as well. So lectins are not always the enemy. Listen to my in-depth show on that on episode 781. If you've never heard of a lectin, you need to check out that show. That was a powerful show in episode 781. All right, number 7 is saturated fats. A lot of people on a keto-based diet, they are guzzling saturated fats by the cup, right? Here's the deal. Can be fine for some people, not fine for others. How do you know if it's okay for you or not? You need to run your cholesterol numbers because cholesterol, by taking in saturated fats, does affect 26% of the population. People say, oh, there's no correlation to high cholesterol and saturated fat. Here's the deal. There is, but unfortunately, it only affects a smaller percentage of the population, which is 26% of the population. It is those people that when they run their DNA genetic test, I will link up the DNA genetic test as well today, the real one. Not again, I have no offense to 23andMe. I think they're fine. I think they're great, but the data is not going to be clear for you. You run something like the one, again, we don't own any labs. We just recommend the best labs. When you run that lab, you're going to find out what your ApoE genotype is. And for the people that contain an ApoE allele 4, number 4, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-4, they're going to be more susceptible to saturated fats. And it can affect their cholesterol, and it can affect their bad cholesterol, their LDL. So check that out. Also, people with gut issues, if you have a lot of gut permeability and you're taking in a lot of saturated fat, well, the truth is this, is that saturated fat and those lipopolysaccharides can actually carry the bacteria through the gut wall and then cause immune reactions from there, autoimmune based as well. So really important to look at. The last thing is this, if you're on a higher fat diet and you're eliminating a lot of the good carbohydrates, what you're doing is a lot of times you're starving overall your gut bacteria, which leads to microbiome imbalances. So a shortage of good gut bacteria. Can't recommend checking out episodes that I've done with before on that in the past. There are too many, so I'm not going to link up a specific one, but you're welcome to simply go to stephencabral.com/podcast and type in DNA or type in ApoE or type in saturated fat. All right, number 8 is long-term keto or low-carb diets. I already started to touch on that, but here's the deal. They seem to work fine, totally fine for a lot of the pitta or mesomorph body type, guys in their 20s and 30s, and fine for women up until about the 3-week to 6-week mark. Once you go beyond that, like really low carb, I'm talking about 50 grams or so or less per day, it can lower thyroid, it can raise cortisol levels. And when you raise cortisol levels, glucocorticoids, your body actually, in women, a lot of women, get it again, I lab test. So this isn't me saying, oh, this just happens. No, it shows up on lab tests. We run something called a thyroid adrenal hormone test. And if you want to see if it's happening to you, well, on your low carb diet, simply run the thyroid adrenal hormone test that you can do right at home. And what it shows is that if it's raising your cortisol levels and it's lowering your thyroid, meaning like your T4 and T3, it will start to raise your thyroid stimulating hormone. That's going to show you that you are under a state of duress or stress and your body is beginning to lower metabolism, metabolic rate. You might feel colder hands, colder feet. You might feel lower mood. Your hair might start to thin out. You might start to lose your eyelashes and eyebrows, especially the last third of the eyebrow. Again, cold body temperature, lower body temperature in the morning. Basal metabolic rate may start to drop. So you might not be able to eat as many calories because you start to gain weight as when you do. So really important to look at that. The other thing that a low carb or keto diet can do is it begin to mess with what's called your leptin and ghrelin levels. When that happens, you do not know, your body isn't turned on as when to stimulate fat burning. So you begin to accumulate more body fat. Again, this can work great for some people, not for others. It certainly does not seem to work great for a lot of women who may already be stressed in the first place, who might be in their 30s or 40s, and they hit that plateau and their metabolic rate begins to lower. You'll see if this is happening to you, and if you're becoming, let's talk about that in 1 second, if you are starting to lower thyroid, but again, just lab testing, you have to figure out your numbers. So, and the other part is this, is that if you lower your carbs for too long, your body become carbohydrate sensitive. It might actually not be able to even deal with carbohydrates when you begin to introduce them. So again, I did a podcast on how to ease off of a low carb diet for overall long-term health. Episode 441 and episode 425. I will link those up. All right, 2 more to go. Is gluten-free good for you? All right, a lot of people go gluten-free, but here's the deal. I'm good with that. I love people going gluten-free. Gluten is not a health food, but here's the deal. A lot of people replace it and they're eating gluten-free cookies and they're eating gluten-free muffins and they're eating gluten-free bread. And here's the deal. They're still processed foods. They're still not good for you. And a lot of times they might even be worse because they're putting in things like xanthan gum, right? It's Xanth, xanthan. I don't know how to spell that while talking at the same time, but it begins with an X and it's pronounced xanthan gum. And then they put in a lot of things like tapioca starches, and these things can really bind up the intestines. All right, when I recommend gluten-free baked products, a lot of times it's just using oat flour or things like that without all the gums attached to them. So that's really, really important. Again, like when you go gluten-free and you're doing like dairy-free and you're doing like, you can't just eat ice cream just because it's gluten-free or dairy-free. Check out episode 565. It will have all the details on that because many of these gluten-free varieties really can be worse for you. Again, I love you going gluten-free, but stick to more of like, okay, I'm not going to do gluten, so I'm not going to do a lot of the breads, but instead let's replace it with the sweet potatoes, the yams, the yuca, the parsnips, the root vegetables, right? Instead of just saying, I'm going to replace one processed food, such as a wheat-based muffin, for a gluten-free muffin. It still can have milk in it. It still can have like all of these other like corn starches. We don't want to do that. It's still not healthy for the body. It can still spike blood sugar and inflammation. All right, episode 565 will tell you an in-depth show, about 20 minutes on each of these about that. Number 10 is that food-only nutrition. I get so many people who are not feeling well. They're not able to lose weight. And honestly, their energy is just depleted. And they're saying to me, I want to just do it through food. And I say, you know what? I was like you. I think it's noble to do that. But when your digestive system is weak, and when you can't properly break down all these great foods that you want to eat, you may need nutritional supplements in the beginning for approximately 12 to 16 weeks. And then you just might want to be on a maintenance plan, which is simply a daily activated multivitamin or the daily nutritional support shake, maybe the daily fruit and vegetable blend for your organic fruits and vegetables, and maybe the daily probiotic support. I call that my Dr. Cabral daily protocol. But again, you might have your favorite brands. I'm totally fine with that. But here's the deal. When your body is run down, when you don't have the energy, when you don't have the digestive strength, you need to be able to properly absorb all of these nutrients. Why not get them in the end form first? Just do yourself a favor. I always say this, get your body healthy first and then test all of these assumptions you have. So use something like a daily digestive enzyme to get your body to be able to break down the foods better, right? Use a daily omega support if you need it for just 12 to 16 weeks to lower those inflammation levels while you're doing the underlying root cause work. You know, don't be afraid to use them. Like if you're low on zinc, well, boost your zinc. If you're low on vitamin C because you ran an organic acids test and you saw you're low on vitamin C, boost your vitamin C. Yes, you can still do, kiwi, as a fruit to boost your vitamin C naturally. Nothing wrong with that. What I'm saying is we live in a day and age where you're allowed to use the best knowledge from functional medicine and the best knowledge from whole food. And I love that. And that's what I always do. Remember, food comes first. If you're not willing to change your nutrition and change your life and all these things, and you're just relying on nutritional supplements, that's not the way to go. I mean, again, when you read my book, The Rain Barrel Effect, my de-stress protocol, only one of the 8 parts is supplements. You still need the other 7 parts to heal your body. You can do that, right? But what I'm saying to you right now is you can get a charge. You can change your life by simply giving yourself back everything that you are deficient in. I see lives change within 12 to 16 weeks because they're able to replenish their mitochondria. They're able to bring the B vitamins back into their body. They're able to get back in the zinc and the selenium and the chromium and everything that the body needs to function. Because remember, the only reason you're in this state of funk right now and you're not able to lose the weight and you're not able to get well is because your body is suffering from deficiencies and it's suffering from too much toxicities. We need to replace those deficiencies and we need to remove the toxicities. And we can do that through functional medicine, bioregulatory medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, pick your favorite medicine, or better yet, combine them all into one super form of medicine, which I hope to be teaching all of you this fall. Hopefully today's episode was helpful. I always enjoy doing these kind of recap shows. If it was helpful, seriously, let me know. Go on Instagram, go on today's show notes. Let me know if this type of show is helpful where I kind of link back to previous shows. If it was, based on your feedback, I'll do more. Because remember, the Cabral concept is your show. It's about you. It's about trying to get me to teach all the things that I see come up in my practice that I believe will help you in the long run. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate each and every one of your listens. If this was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.